We are back, and it's week 3 of the NFL season, and it's time to take a look at the Draftkings slate for week 3, and we're going to be kind of putting together a little bit of our Millionaire Maker lineup. Now, this is not a final lineup, but we're going to go over our sleepers, studs, and stacks. Sleepers are going to be those guys under $5,500 that you can go out and really save a ton of money, and you're going to get good value in return. The studs, the high-priced guys that are actually going to be paying off high dividends. It's expensive, so you need to be able to nail those. And then a quick look at our stacks. And those are going to be the quarterback you can pair with a wide receiver and possibly have a run back with. We missed a couple of our running backs last week, but we absolutely crushed the sleeper wide receivers. And in Patreon, we even gave you a lineup that cashed in all formats, including a Anthony Richardson starting quarterback. So shout out to Greg Hughes, who knows that I know absolutely nothing about football, even though we've won awards for having some of the best information out there in the DFS world. It's not a guarantee to cash every week, but we hope to help you out a little bit. Let's get into the video.
This is All Access, your home for fantasy sports talk.
Per usual, we're starting it off with guys under $5,500. I'm not a huge fan of paying way down for my quarterback, but every once in a while I will take a glance, and this week could be one of those weeks. CJ Stroud has looked really good, including last week when he had an offensive line that was pretty beat up. I think they were down 4 starters or 4 members of that offensive line, and he was still able to deliver. Last week, he attempted to throw nearly 50 times. That is huge volume, and you're getting it for $5,300. No, he does not have the best weapons in the world, but you've heard me talk about Bobby Trees, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins all year long, that they're good enough to get the job done. If he's able to avoid some of the turnovers, they could possibly pull off an upset, seeing as how bad Jacksonville played last week. But this Houston defense is not great. I think Jacksonville puts up points. CJ Stroud playing from behind, going to be throwing the ball a lot once again. If we can get a couple of touchdowns out of that, I'll forgive a turnover here or there. Plus, it's probably the cheapest stack you're going to see on the week. Outside of CJ Stroud and under $5,500, I don't think there's a whole lot to love. I don't love Derek Carr. They could be throwing the ball a little bit more against Green Bay than they have against other teams if Jamal Williams is out. Sam Howell probably chasing points, but Buffalo defense is still a really good defense. I think that's kind of the only thing I'm liking under $5,500. Now the running backs, and there's some guys we like now, but things are always going to change. That's why it's so imperative that you're looking at injuries, NFL news, even weather. And that's what we give over on Patreon. For those of you that want to support the channel above and beyond just dropping a like or a comment on this video, which I'm very thankful for, we want to give you a little bit more in return. So to get our late bloomers, our starting 5, our player rankings, a weather report, NFL news, injury news, all of that comes out on Patreon Sunday mornings directly into your inbox. That link is down in the description below. But for now, there is a ton of things to like. Zach Moss, I think a lot of people quietly, if he's available on your waiver wire, go pick him up. He saw 100% of the runs last week for the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, it was only 18 attempts, but if Anthony Richardson needs to be a little bit more cautious with running the ball, they're probably going to be finding Zach Moss a little bit more often. That's not to say that I absolutely love him this week against Baltimore. It's just if you play fantasy football, maybe take a look at that. When Kyren Williams and Jerome Ford have already been claimed, Zach Moss might still be out there. Real quick, a couple of players to look at just in case of injury. Obviously, Joshua Kelly. If Austin Eckler is out going up against a weaker Minnesota defense front who just got torn up by the Philadelphia Eagles, they absolutely could not stop the run. Joshua Kelly clearly going to be a smash play, but if Eckler's out, you won't be the only ones on him. Tyjae Spears at $4,400. Obviously, if Derrick Henry's not there, we're not going to be the only ones that are on him. Derrick Henry did miss Thursday's practice, dealing with a little bit of a toe injury as well as just some veteran rest. He is seeing a couple of targets in the passing game with his limited snaps, and he is getting the rushes when he is in there. Now, it is a little bit of a stronger defensive front for the Cleveland Browns, but we know how much Tennessee likes to run the ball, and someone's going to have to do it. And at $4,400, you're getting him cheaper than you are the Jerome Ford on the flip side. Speaking of Ford, again, going up against Tennessee, who has been better against the run than many people anticipated, including myself. I thought that they were going to struggle a little bit, but they are absolutely stopping the run. Jerome Ford at $4,800, workhorse overload until Kareem Hunt gets caught up to speed. I think it's obviously going to be a great play, depending on the ownership of how it's all going to shake out. 2 more guys that I want to talk about that I don't think people are going to be talking about just because they are chasing guys. If Eckler's out, would be Joshua Kelly, Jerome Ford, Tajay Sharp if Derrick Henry's gone, Isaiah Pacheco going up against a terrible Chicago Bears defense. In terms of standard runners, Isaiah Pacheco, if healthy, who was a limited participant Thursday with a hamstring issue, he's going to get the bulk of the carries, 12 for 70 yards. That's over 5.5 yards per carry. That's extremely efficient. He has yet to find the end zone, getting 8 and 9 points. If he finds the end zone, that puts us at 15. At $5,400, if we're getting 15 points from Isaiah Pacheco, that gets us to that 3 times value, which we absolutely love. And that's against a bad Chicago Bears defense. They have a whole bunch of crap going on behind the scenes. It might not be real. It might be real. It could all just be hearsay. You never know what's going on. But regardless, the media is buzzing and their focus cannot be 100% on football right now. And honestly, they're just a terrible team. Lastly, my favorite play, if the starters are missing time from everyone that we've mentioned, would be, yes, I'm a Panthers fan, but Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders was out with a pec injury. He's had limited touches on both days of practice so far, but they're going up against the Seattle Seahawks defense that has been a little bit less than impressive against the run. Chuba Hubbard, on the other hand, has been extremely effective with the run. Over his last 50 touches, he's averaging like 7 yards a carry, 6.5, 8. He's going to get it done when he gets the ball, plus he has great catching upside. 10 points and 8 points when playing less than 40% of the snaps. If Miles Sanders isn't there, the Panthers are going to be chasing down points. Andy Dalton will be in. The easiest thing to do is just turn around, hand the ball off. My favorite part of every single video has got to be the wide receivers under $5,500. We usually throw a couple darts at the running backs. I like to pay up for running backs, down for wide receivers, because I think there's always really good value. There's always wide receiver injuries. There's always game plans where you can find a slot guy who hasn't been used a lot that's going to be in a matchup nightmare against the defense. So once again, there's great potential here. Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the LA Chargers, a team that was absolutely destroyed week 1 by the Miami Dolphins. And they gave up a 132.6 QBR rating to Ryan Tannehill. They're last in points per game allowed. They're last in total yards allowed. They're last in passing defense. Jordan Addison, when so much attention is going to be going over to Jordan Jefferson, if we can get exactly what Jordan Addison has been doing over the first 2 weeks, he's in a very advantageous position in week 3. I think Jordan Addison is a home run smash this week. $5,300. Again, I mentioned CJ Stroud. His favorite target so far has been Nico Collins. Now he gets a Jaguars defense that is susceptible at time against the pass. They have really aggressive linebackers. They have a good front. Andre Sisco is a good safety, but they don't have great defensive backs. Again, they're going to be having to throw the ball, especially if they're throwing it 45 plus times. The volume is going to be there with 20 targets through 2 weeks. Do I expect him to get a 30-point game? No, but it is nice to know that that is what he's capable of if he absolutely had to. I think a week 1 stat line is more appropriate. 6 catches, 10 targets, 80 yards. Hopefully there's a touchdown sprinkled in there. And we're still getting 14 to 15 points with an identical stat line. Obviously, at the end of this video, we are going to be building a little bit of a lineup with the guys that we mentioned and tell you how you can win your Millionaire Maker ticket for free. So pay attention to the end and see how you can win. There's a couple of guys in this area, obviously. Bobby Trees, worth a look. We've already talked about how they're going to be playing from behind. Same game, Zay Jones, if he is healthy. I believe 13 targets already on the season. 13 targets. He didn't have any catches last week on those 6 targets, but he's going to get involved if he is healthy. But somebody in particular is Elijah Moore. If Tennessee is going to be clogging up the run, they're going to have to throw it. He hasn't looked like he's been on the same page exactly with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson really looks like he's just an overpaid facilitator of the ball right now. 3 receptions, but he does have 16 targets on the season. They've even gotten him involved in the running game. It's clearly obvious that they want to get him involved with this offense, and I think they're going to continue to try and force the ball to him. 5 catches this game is certainly plausible against a weaker defensive back situation for the Tennessee Titans. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say Adam Thielen is a decent or okay play if you're really pressed for money at $3,900 against a Seattle Seahawks defense that is susceptible to those up and down crazy games. I'm not going to do it. We're running it back with the guy we gave you last week. If you check out the comments, we do put some of those late bloomers down there in the comments. Be like, hey, here's a guy we missed. Here's someone that's come to our attention. Here's something you need to be playing. And last week, that was Josh Reynolds. Amon-Ra St. Brown has looked good this season, but he is dealing with a little bit of a turf toe injury. They're going to have to get the ball somewhere else. David Montgomery could be missing time with a little bit of a quad issue, so that means Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and Josh Reynolds, 3 guys that we've talked about almost every week being involved more and more as the season goes on, are now thrust into that position. If Zay Jones is out, just put Christian Kirk in your lineup. Even if he's not out, consider Christian Kirk. 14 targets last week when they were so focused on Calvin Ridley. You're not going to get this kind of volume from anyone else at this level. I don't really need to spend much time on it. If Zay Jones is certainly out, Christian Kirk to the moon. The tight ends. Now, basically everyone is under $5,500, and if you know me, I say it every single week. I don't like to pay up for my tight end unless it is Travis Kelce, because he gets you essentially wide receiver one volume. We did have a little bit more leveling out last week with TJ Hockenson, Mark Andrews, and Kelce all finishing near the top, but then you also have Hunter Henry, Logan Thomas, Taysom Hill, Kylan Granson, Jake Ferguson, Sam Laporta, Luke Schoonmaker were all mixed in to the top 10, 11 tight ends. Just identify a good matchup and pay for that one. Trust your instincts. We already mentioned Sam Laporta, that running out of pass catching options if Amon-Ra is out. Even if he is in there, he could just be a decoy that we've seen other teams use. Dalton Schultz has slowly gotten more involved in the passing game. It looks like CJ Stroud is trusting him a little bit more, especially if those weapons on the outside who aren't excellent, if they aren't able to get open, Dalton Schultz could find some open field. Saving a little bit more money, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys, who is getting a ton of looks in the red zone, and they're going to be in the red zone a lot against this Arizona Cardinals team. Dalton Kincaid is being used in a variety of ways, right? Like they're pulling him in tight to help with the run game. He's helping with a little bit of blocking, or he's helping as just coming in from a tight formation. He's also being spread way out wide. He's even taking snaps from the slot. At $3,400, 6 targets, 4 targets, in a Buffalo Bills team that is going to be high volume in passing, I like this play at $3,400. I almost want to make this my top tight end play. I'm not completely sold on it yet, but I really, really like it, and a lot of people are talking about it more and more as the week goes on. Our top quarterback plays, obviously we've talked about Patrick Mahomes. He looks a little bit out of sync. He's going to get it fixed against Chicago. After this, we'll probably be looking his way. A lot to love with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert is a good play against a weak Minnesota Vikings defense, or at least defensive back situation. Justin Fields, I'm going to hold off on. Kansas City held Jacksonville down to a couple of points last week. They might be able to do the same against Justin Fields. Tua, there's a lot to love there. Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence. Yes, Bradley's probably saying Trevor Lawrence again for the third week in a row. Dak Prescott, but Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins are probably 2 stacks that I'm looking at because I think it is affordable. If you go with Kirk Cousins, you can get him with Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, TJ Hockenson for a little bit more affordable than you can with Justin Jefferson, who, yes, is his favorite target, but you're still going to get plenty of volume elsewhere. And then Jared Goff with Josh Reynolds, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and a healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown. Told you I really do like to pay up for my running backs typically, so I want to make sure that I crush this play. The high-priced guys that you need to be looking at, Tony Pollard is probably going to be the obvious one. If Eckler is out, I think a lot of people will be on Pollard against a weaker Arizona Cardinals defense. This is a game Dallas should be able to handle, even though they have missed some pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Tony Pollard is going to be fed at a high volume and a high rate. He even gets involved in the passing game. We've talked about Bijan Robinson 2 weeks in a row, and I think if there is a week that I absolutely want him in my lineup, this is going to be the one. But Bradley, Detroit is 13th in points allowed to fantasy running backs, and they're 9th in rushing. Are you sure that you absolutely want to be playing him? Yeah, seeing as how they went up against Kansas City, who doesn't really run the ball, and the Seattle Seahawks, whose running back averages 15 rushes a game. Atlanta, on the flip side, absolutely lives and dies by the run. Whether they're up by 10 or down by 10, they're going to get Bijan involved. It's going to be handoffs if they're ahead and catches out of the backfield if they are behind. Obviously, there are some really good plays. Travis Etienne continues to be involved. Ramondre Stevenson against a pretty good New York Jets defense. I'm going to be shying away from right now, but obviously worth a look. Jahmyr Gibbs, if David Montgomery is out, that's a nice play. James Cook against Washington, who's very quietly, James Cook is having one of the best fantasy seasons of any running back, 22 and 10, getting good involvement here, good catches out of the backfield. And lastly, Raheem Mostert at $6,000 is a little bit of good savings from some of the higher price guys, but he still is going to be working as running back 1 in that offense because they are dealing with injuries, and he's one of the most trusted guys that they have. Brian Robinson was able to take this Broncos defense for 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a couple of catches, averaging 21 yards a catch. Raheem Mostert could get you similar volume, especially if they're playing from ahead, as well as get you some catches out of the backfield. Absolutely love Justin Jefferson at the wide receiver position. There's no reason you shouldn't play him if you have the money. Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, obviously the guys at the top you're going to love. They're priced up appropriately for a reason. We don't have time to talk about all of them. Stephon Diggs getting 20 targets already in the NFL season, going up against the Commanders defense that did give up some big plays, including a crazy Hail Mary against the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. It's hard to make Russell Wilson look really good, and somehow the Commanders were able to do it. Keenan Allen against the Minnesota Vikings. If I am playing this Minnesota stack and probably going to be going with Jordan Addison, there's no reason I can't run it back with Keenan Allen at $7,600. Yes, it is a little bit pricey, but he's going to be the number 1 target there. Could it possibly be Mike Williams, who got 13 targets last week at only $5,700? It absolutely could, but I think they're going to depend on Keenan Allen a little bit more. Now, if we have Keenan Allen in there, it is going to be a little bit pricey to see how this works. So who else do we love that are high end? Obviously, Calvin Ridley in that Jacksonville-Houston game. Houston's given up big yardage to wide receiver ones this season. I think that continues. Calvin Ridley going to have a little bit of a bounce-back game after still getting a good amount of targets, only getting 2 receptions last week. Michael Pittman Jr. against the Baltimore Ravens, who, again, gave up some yardage to the Houston Texans, and a Ravens defense that gave up points to Joe Burrow's struggling Cincinnati Bengals offense. And Anthony Richardson, they might want to take a little bit more cautious and be like, hey, man, listen, we appreciate the running, but we're going to have to slow you down fresh off the concussion. Let's revisit in a few weeks. Give me this Bills defense real quick. $4,600 just to finish out this lineup. I don't know if it's feasible. We might have to come off of probably Raheem Mostert and go get one of those guys under $5,500 for the injuries, but let's just shape this up real quick. Kirk Cousins stacking him with Jordan Addison, a little bit of a run back with Keenan Allen, who we've talked about absolutely loving. Bijan Robinson, possibly our favorite running back play of the day. Raheem Mostert, not absolutely in love with, but we talked about him, so we're going to throw him in there. Nico Collins as kind of a splash play against that Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Dalton Kincaid, $3,400, probably the best value, and that leaves you $4,600. You could put in a Rashad Bateman, a Kareem Hunt, who might be getting involved. We don't really know exactly what to expect so far. Zay Jones, if healthy. Even if he's not healthy, he's still getting 13 targets through 2 weeks. Tyjae Spears, if Derrick Henry is down, is obviously another viable option. And Robert Woods, again, against that Jacksonville defense, who is giving up an okay amount of points. They looked pretty good against Kansas City last week, but Kansas City's wide receiving weapons were terrible. If you don't want Dalton Kincaid, go get Ferguson, put in Reynolds into your lineup, and this is something that I could possibly put into a 50-50 double-up lineup because I think all of these guys have a really high floor going into this week. Is this my final lineup? No. If you want to get a better look at that, head over to Patreon down in the comments and description below. If you're confident in your player picks, like I am confident in these guys, take the over, sign up on Vivid Picks, enter into some player props, over, under, yards gained, tackles made, field goals made. The list goes on and on. Sign up on Vivid Picks. They have a huge promotion going on right now. That's also in the comments and in the description. Tell me where I went right, tell me where I went wrong, but most importantly, tell me who is going to be the highest scoring player on week 3 of the NFL season. If you give me the highest scoring player on the main slate and the number, but we need to see Bijan Robinson, 32 points. Put that down in there. If Bijan Robinson is the highest scoring player and he puts up 32.8 points, 32.4 points, 32, that whole number, if he puts that up and you are correct, one person who correctly guessed the highest scoring player and their points will get their Millionaire Maker ticket paid for free by me next week. So you'll be entering week 4 on my dime. I appreciate you watching this video. There's a million things you could be doing and a million people you could be watching, but you chose to spend a little bit of time with me. I appreciate you hanging out. Hopefully the next time that I see you is down in the comments and in the green this week. Best of luck, and I'll see you next week.